answer for American accent. Let's tackle top 3 errors non-native speakers make when speaking English. I want to point out why these errors happen, what they are, and how you can fix them so you can really get a solid understanding of whether or not you're making these mistakes and how to correct them. So the first of the top errors that you might be making when you're speaking English has to do with the spelling of the word does not equal the sounds of the word. This is one of the most frustrating things about English. So many times we look at a word and the way it's spelled makes us think it has a certain pronunciation, but unfortunately we're very inconsistent. We do have spelling rules and patterns, but there's so many exceptions to the rules, especially on everyday common words. And so you might be looking at a word and pronouncing it a certain way because of how it's spelled. I'm going to give you some examples, and we're going to talk about why spelling is not the same as sounds and what you can do to check for this error and to correct for this error. So when it comes to spelling of words, one example, we have the spelled word said. Now, if I look at this and I look at the patterns, you would think it sounds like sade. We have words like raid, paid, etc., and those have the A vowel. We also have the word say has the A vowel, so why wouldn't it also be sade? It's not. The pronunciation, the sounds are, the S does say this sound, so when we look at the sounds, not equal. We have this, and then we have the E sound, which in the IPA, or in the dictionary, you'll see is this symbol for E. I call that the red tent vowel. And then we do have the D sound. So it sounds more like said, like as in red or bed. So this word said is an exception to our spelling patterns and rules, where it has the sounds of words spelled like this, and it doesn't have the sounds of words spelled like this. So it's understandable why a word like said, you might think it's pronounced sade. So that's one example of how spelling does not equal sounds. Let me give you another, and you can see if you're making this mistake as well, which is the word word. So the word word is spelled with letters OR. You might think it says the OR sound, like in for or more. But in the word word, the letters OR don't say or. In fact, the sounds of word are the W for the W, the for the letters OR, and the D for the D. So it's actually, if it followed the spelling rules, we would write it this way, word, or we could write it with IR or UR. But basically, it's the same as in the word were, where those letters ER do say for were. So you might be pronouncing word correctly, or you might be trying to do something different between these two words. We were using words. When you get to this word word, you might be trying to use something more like an or, like ward, or just it might be affecting how you're pronouncing that word. So our number one pattern, spelling and not equal sounds, affects many, many words that you might not be aware of. Now, some of these words you use, you hear, you learn them that way, you're pronouncing them correctly. But if you are stronger in reading and writing, or if you learned English from someone who's not a native speaker, if you learned English by reading, a lot of times these errors persist in your spoken language, even if you're using English all the time. You just aren't aware of them because they're subtle, they're small. And so I'm going to recommend tomorrow I have a new video dropping where you can see some of the top 5 errors on particular words, and most of those have to do with spelling and sounds. I also today want to talk about number 2, the second most common error that you might make as a non-native speaker, and that is looking at the syllables. So the rhythm of the word. You might be doing one of two things when it comes to syllables. You might be using the wrong syllable stress, which is going to change how you pronounce the word. Syllable stress affects the pronunciation of vowel sounds. You might also be missing syllables or dropping syllables, not connecting syllables properly. So syllable rhythm is the number 2 top error pattern that happens for non-native speakers when they're speaking English. This affects longer words and shorter words. Sometimes it's not just because the word is long and has tons of syllables that you're making an error on it. So for number 2, syllables, I want to look at a couple of different examples. One, let's look at when you might be stressing the incorrect syllable. So on a word like educated, I often hear non-native speakers say this as educated. They might be stressing on the K syllable. That, I think, happens primarily because we do that on the word education. We do stress on the A, education. A is stressed. But in educated, the correct pronunciation, the correct syllable stress is to stress the ed syllable. So it's not educated, but rather educated. So is that a pattern that happens for you? You can leave me a comment letting me know, or tell me in the chat right now if you tend to stress on the K instead of the ed syllable in a word like educated, or a similar word would be demonstrated, etc., etc. That's because this pattern is so consistent, education, demonstration, communication, that we tend to overgeneralize that pattern and then accidentally stress here when we should be stressing here. So that has to do with where I'm stressing. I would say it's the number 2 pattern, syllables. So that's syllable stress. So that's the first part, where to stress. And then how many syllables to use. If syllables drop out, this is common for a lot of speakers for longer words, that the way they're connecting between syllables may mean that they're not using every syllable correctly. So a good example for that would be the word science. If I'm saying the word science, it has 2 syllables, science with the psi being stressed. I would rewrite that, as you know, if you watch my videos and if you attend live class, I like to respell things following the rules and patterns of English so that you can be clear on what sounds you're making. You saw that sounds and spelling don't match, and so following the patterns to help you repronounce is one of the techniques we use here on the channel and in my online courses. So in science, these are our 2 syllables. If I just say science, and I just say those sounds, it may end up sounding more like I'm saying the word signs. That has 1 syllable, but science has 2. And why is that happening? It's because there's a hidden sound in science. We're not just saying the psi and the ints. As we move from that I vowel into the ints, we end up with a little hidden y sound, science. And so very often non-native speakers will drop, they won't do this little hidden y sound, that vowel to vowel linking, and they'll just say science, and it'll sound like signs instead of science. Also happens on words like bioengineering. I'll just hear bio. I won't hear the IO, bioengineering. It misses those drops, those syllables, and that's a big issue for being understood by people that you're speaking to, because it ends up condensing and you end up losing syllables, and it sounds like an entirely different word. So we have syllables stress, and then we have syllable dropping. Another reason syllables can drop is just if you're having a difficult time pronouncing some of the syllables, or you're mispronouncing some of the sounds in the syllables. I often hear pronunciation errors that are related to the rhythm of the word. Where we're stressing makes a change in how the vowels sound in a syllable. So you can get a lot more help for which syllables to stress and how to pronounce those correctly in my videos for that here on the channel. Check out our intonation playlist. It walks you through the rhythm of words, the rhythm of phrases, the rhythm of sentences. And I also highly recommend for this particular pattern where we have that hidden Y sound, that hidden ya, for those kinds of hidden sounds that connect syllables, you can check out our linking and reduced sounds playlist. This particular pattern is called vowel to vowel linking. Check out in the description below if you're watching this as a replay. I'll put links to videos to help you with this pattern if you notice that you tend to say this more condensed as one syllable rather than two. Check it out, try it out loud right now as you're listening, and then leave me a comment or say in the chat if you feel like you're really doing this hidden yes sound science, or if it's dropping out for you as well and you're just kind of getting science. I'm curious to know if you can notice that in your own speech as you are attending class today and checking that out. Okay, and I will be taking your questions live later when we finish our first topic for the day. So you can also, at any point as you're watching, put your questions in the chat or in the comments. In the chat, I'll get to those live today. In the comments, I'll come back to you and give you resources here on the channel to help you with your questions. Nice to see so many of you here today. Welcome, everyone. Let's look at number 3 for the top reasons why we make errors when we're speaking English. We had our spelling versus sounds. That spelling in English is complicated, doesn't always match the sounds. We often make errors on words because of how they're spelled. Number 2 was our rhythm, syllables we just talked about. Number 3, we have accent patterns. And these are because of your native language. So our native language sets up in our brain a sound system. The sounds in your native language, the rules for how they're used, what you get immersed in first, even if you have multiple languages, sets up and frames a framework in your brain for how you hear English coming in. So if I learn Spanish as my native language, I have 5 general vowel sounds that match the spelling. That's another reason spelling and sounds is hard in English. In Spanish, an A is an A and an I is an E, and it doesn't change, with the exception of loan words coming in from other languages. But that sound system, those vowels that were in my first language, affect how I hear all of the vowels of English. So we have 15 vowel sounds in English. We have 5 letters to spell them, contributes to this problem. We also have a lot of vowel sounds that you may or may not have in your native language. So for example, if you don't have the sound, like in book, your native language might have an sound, and that's as close as you're going to get in terms of hearing the sounds. So when I'm saying book or should, your ear, your brain might be saying book or should. It's hearing that patterning, translating it through the filter of your native language and giving you some incorrect pronunciation. So that's true for vowels, it's true for consonant sounds, whether or not you have them in your native language, and whether or not they're used in the same way in the same places in words. So you may even have that sound in your language, but it doesn't occur at the beginning of a word, or it doesn't occur at the end of the word. And that pattern is part of the rules that your brain uses when you're speaking and when you're listening, so that your brain doesn't want to break those rules it learned. You do eventually work your way to breaking them as you speak English for longer, if you get help with accent training, if you work on those patterns, but it's definitely one of the top patterns that we have. So native language patterns are one of the 3 top reasons you might have mispronunciations and have an accent when you're speaking English. So let's look at some examples of this. There's some obvious ones for a lot of people. For example, the American English R sound is challenging. The TH sound is challenging. When you combine those sounds, it's extra challenging. So these are some of the obvious ones that you probably know about, where the R is totally different in your language. A lot of languages have a rolled R, which is made with the front of the tongue. It's a very different sound. Red is very different than red. A lot of languages don't have the TH sound. And so when you're trying to say three or the or breathe, it's very hard for you to get that tongue position. It feels very unnatural. These, especially the TH, I would say, are ones that with some instruction, some practice on common words, you can really establish those sounds, start to use them when you're speaking English, feel more comfortable and natural. It's definitely something you can shift over into and you can get help for those here on the channel in my videos for that. Check out my American Sounds playlist, and I do actually have a playlist just for R and just for TH because those are top sounds and challenges for a lot of people. But the patterns you might not realize or might not be aware of tend to be a little more subtle. One of them is on this sound, which in the IPA looks like this, an N with a big long tail. And the sound equals, we usually spell it with letters NG, like doing, going, etc. A lot of languages don't have this sound, or they don't use it the same way we do in English. And what you'll end up with is when you're trying to say something like doing, it's going to sound like doin, where you end up using just an N sound, doin. Now, this is okay in some casual English environments. We might say, how you doing? How's it going? We do use that for casual speech. But for most verbs and most words that have the NG sound, the ng sound, we use the full NG. We don't say doin', we say doing. If I say I'm working on my resume in a job interview, it's going to sound inappropriately casual, informal. So I want to really be able to say I'm working on, I'm going into, etc., using that full NG sound. But when you try to use that as a non-native speaker, if your language doesn't have the same rules or the same sound, you're going to end up having an extra k or a g sound there. I'll hear a lot of people say doing, going, doink, goink. It's a very, very common pattern, and it's so prevalent, so noticeable in your speech because so many verbs have this NG sound. And it's a simple matter of how you're executing and moving your tongue. I won't get into details too many details of correcting that, but I will direct you to my videos for the NG sound and how to use that when you're linking to other words. A lot of places that comes in to play. For example, in a word like singing or singer, we have two of those sounds in a row. I don't want singing or singer, but rather singing. I have to lift up to that NG sound and come back out without my tongue dropping rapidly to make the g sound. So those kinds of details you can get in our Sounds of English course on speechmodification.com. I'm going to walk you through the sounds and the spelling and really get you a solid foundation for understanding all of the sounds of English and how they're spelled and what accent error patterns to watch out for. Check that out again here on the channel in my videos for that. And if you have a specific question about that, leave me a comment and I'll direct you to those videos. And you can also get help in our Sounds of English course. So let me know in the comments or in the chat right now if you think this is a pattern that you tend to do, whether you just say, for example, I'm going in. Do you hear a little g, going in? Or are you able to say it as going in? Or does it come out, I'm going in? So you're looking for getting this ng sound correct. And that's a pattern that's very, very common. Many, many non-native speakers have errors on this one. And it's one that they often don't realize that they're doing, but it's very noticeable to people listening, as I said before, because it's such a common sound. So native language patterns, another area that we look at, of course, with native language patterns is vowel sounds. So one of the vowels that's most challenging for non-native speakers is the vowel. It's in words like put and should. And I would say in these words, when it's spelled with letter U or letters OU, put, push, should, that's when people have the most success saying the sound correctly. The challenge here is it overlaps with our spelling issue. So I also have words like good and book, where the spelling pattern that you are aware of and know, even if you don't consciously know it, your brain knows that letters OO usually say the oo vowel, like in food or pool. And so you might be applying that rule here and saying something more like good or book. Try saying those out loud right now. Say, good book. Did it come out a little more like good book? Or are you having trouble hearing the difference between those two? That's where that native language filter comes in. Your brain is hearing, even though I'm saying this vowel, good, your brain is translating it and not really making a differentiation between good and good. So one thing you can do to help with that is get contrast words. For example, we have the man's name Luke, and we have the word look. Look has our vowel, and Luke has our tense u vowel. So look at Luke. If it's hard for you to hear the difference between those two, that's definitely something you want to look into and get some solid foundation and help for hearing this vowel, pronouncing this vowel. So native language patterns have a huge effect, of course, on our pronunciation of English, and they can have an interplay with spelling and sounds, as well as with the rhythm and syllables of words. So to sum it up, the main categories, the top 3 errors that affect your speech are going to be how a word is spelled and if it doesn't match the sounds, what the rhythm and syllables of the word are, and then what your native language is and what accent error patterns you might have on it. If you don't know what the sound system of your language is and what accent error patterns to watch out for, I do have free guides on my website, speechmodification.com. In our store page, in our downloads, you can download a guide that'll tell you exactly which sounds in English you might be making errors on because of your native language. So there's no charge for that. It's a great way to get a good resource for understanding where to start, how to start working on all 3 of these areas, and of course, many, many resources here for you on the channel in our videos and playlists, as well as in our online courses on speechmodification.com. So thanks so much for being part of this beginning part of class, listening to those patterns. I am excited, very excited that we have a new video dropping tomorrow, a slightly different style, really giving you some quick resources to change 5 really important words that are subject to this first pattern of spelling and sounds. So tune back in tomorrow morning and you'll get to see 5 words that you can correct right away that'll make a big difference in how you sound. And then, of course, to go into more detail, work a little bit longer on some of these other patterns, use the resources I mentioned before. So thanks for sticking with me. I'm going to turn to your questions now. If I don't get to everyone's question today, please still leave it in a comment after class and I'll get back to you with resources. I do go through all of my comments to help people outside of the class time as well. Okay, great to see so many of you here. I'm so excited to turn to your questions. So we have a question about, a good one, ingenious and ingenuous. So let's look at how to pronounce ingenious versus ingenuous. Ingenious, this is just like the word genius, ingenious. So we did talk about the word genius in last week's class. And the other word you want is ingenuous. So ingenuous, I'm just checking the spelling there. They're both stressed on the second syllable. They both have the same in sound at the beginning, unstressed I, in. But in ingenious, we have the j sound and the e vowel. And then yes, we have that little hidden, not so hidden because it's spelled with letter I here, but the y sound, ingenious. So that sounds like in gene, yes. And then for ingenuous, 4 syllables instead of 3. So this is an example of where syllables and rhythm are going to affect whether or not you're pronouncing these correctly. So for in stress on gen, we have the eh vowel for letter E. Here we have the E sound, here we have the S sound. So I would write that as in gen, following our spelling pattern and rule, respelling for you, in gen. And now we have you, us. So ingenuous. And here's another place where the reason why you might accidentally drop a syllable here, have this syllable rhythm error, is that we have not only this y, hidden y sound, ingenuous, but also a hidden w sound as we move from that rounded u to the unrounded us. Ingenuous, us. We're going to have that w sound connecting them. If it's not there, ingenious, I might end up sounding like I'm just making 3 syllables instead of ingenuous, all 4 syllables. So I love how our first request from today lined up with those top errors. The things you're asking about are things that you might have a suspicion. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correctly. And now you can take a little look at why that might be happening and how to correct that easily and quickly. Thank you for that question. Great way to start our Q&A portion of this class. Okay, we have a question about how to pronounce. Oh yes, so people are telling me they do drop it. French is more difficult. Is it true? We have a question about the word. So we have some questions. Clarify for me your question if I don't quite understand it correctly, but we have a question about the word clingy. I think you're probably asking about the ng there. And yeah, it's not clingy, but rather clingy, clingy. So in the IPA, you're going to see cling. You're going to see that long tail for the ng sound, and then the e. So it's like the word cling, no g, and then the e sound. Clingy. Yeah, very good reference, good question about that ng sound. We don't have, I think the problem with this one is that we see 2 letters, so we think we should have 2 sounds. We think that should be an n and a g sound, but really it's just one sound, the ng sound. So again, that goes back to how something is spelled, as well as if you don't have that pattern in your native language. So there's overlap between these error patterns, and clingy is a great example of that. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, wonderful. We have a question about exercises to train the brain to pronounce vowels. So one of our channel members is a Spanish speaker. He's saying, how do I retrain my brain to not revert back to those Spanish vowels? So for you, I would highly recommend taking it one vowel at a time and going back to our spelling and sounds error pattern and trying to learn about the English spelling patterns and rules. So just for example, start with the letter A, which in Spanish is going to be the sound ah. So that makes you think that in English you're going to want to do ah like father. But father is an exception. Usually we don't spell the ah sound with letter A. We actually spell it with letter O. So let me reorganize here. So for the spelling, for the sound, it matches in Spanish. A equals ah. But for the spelling, A in English equals ah. So that's like cat, black. So when you see an A in English, 95% of the time or 99% of the time, it's going to be the ah sound if it's the main vowel in the word. So what you need to start doing as a Spanish speaker is every time you see a word in English, use something like black cat. So if you come across a new word, plant, last, after, tell yourself when you see that A, ah. So you might use another word like black plant, cat plant, last cat, after the cat, after that. You're going to try to really pair that ah sound, memorize the A as ah, and put it into all of these words when you see the A. Then you can also work in reverse, and when you're looking for where this Spanish sound happens, the ah sound, so this is letter A, sound in English is ah. When you're looking for the sound of closest to Spanish, in English we use ah, which is slightly further back, but these are basically the same. When you're looking for the sound, the letter in English is going to be letter O. So you're going to see words like not, hot, problem, and because, again, here in Spanish, you see O, you think O, you might be mispronouncing these. What you need to do is when you see the letter O in English, you're really going to focus on this ah sound and thinking about, for example, you can use a word where it does say ah in English. The one of few where the letter A says ah, and you can say my father's not, my father's problem, my father got hot. You're looking for making a strong association between letter O and the sound of ah. So you can get help for that in my Sounds of English course. Also in the sounds and spelling videos here, I have a playlist called The Letters of English and Their Sounds. I also have the Vowels of English. It teaches you these techniques. Go through and just take it one at a time. Try to really focus in on for example, first letter A and the ah sound, next letter O and the ah sound, to retrain and kind of move away from falling into those Spanish vowels or your other native language vowels. These patterns are very similar across a lot of languages. And as I said before, on my website, you can get an accent pattern download for free that's going to show you what the sounds are to watch out for, so that you're also not trying to work on every single thing in English. It can be overwhelming. We have 15 vowel sounds. If you know which things to home in on, you can look for those particular patterns. I'm laughing because I just made a common error that native speakers make. So I also am featuring a video soon about things that native speakers do incorrectly that you don't want to copy. And I just did one of them, which is the expression home in on. A lot of us accidentally say hone in on. This is the correct one. It comes from homing in, like a homing pigeon. Hone means to sharpen or to narrow, and I just made that mistake. If you're interested in learning about other errors that native speakers often make, check out my video for that. I can link that below as well. Just give me a reminder in the comments to do it. I talk about, I think, 9, somewhere between 6 and 9 of these top errors that people make. So I'm chuckling at myself for making that error, but it just goes to show you that I'm certainly not perfect. I'm subject to potential errors and issues, just like every speaker of English. And sometimes it helps to know that what to watch out for native speakers, not to copy it, but also just that we make mistakes too. It's easy to have errors, and ours may not come from these elements, but sometimes we mispronounce words because of spelling and getting the syllables and the rhythms wrong. If we're encountering a new word, for example, we don't always know where to stress, and that'll change how we think it might be pronounced. Great. Okay. Wonderful to see so many of you here. Let's keep going for a few more minutes. I'll try to get to as many of your questions as I can. Thank you so much. It's nice to see you, and thank you for your super chat, your contribution. And yes, I do have online courses. You can go to my website, speechmodification.com. That'll be linked in the description to this video and also on my channel. My online courses, the top ones to look at are our Sounds of English course. We have an advanced course called Real Talk that looks at fluent speaking, and then our American Accent 6-week course. I also do offer a personalized course that you can purchase where I'll go through and assess your speech, tell you what patterns you have, and give you resources to work on all of the different patterns. And that includes a one-on-one session with me to give you a little bit more help. So check those out on speechmodification.com. Just click on our courses page. Wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for your support of the channel. Okay, we have a question about 3 and tree. So as I was mentioning when we were talking about the top errors, this one comes from difficult sounds. So for many non-native speakers, the TH sound and the R sound are difficult, and when we have to put them together, it's even more challenging. So for the word 3, what I recommend is start with just your sound, re. Then add your TH sound back. And basically, when I say re, 3, I'm going to be able to sneak my tongue forward for that TH sound and then pull back for the tight R sound. I do have a video talking about words like three and through and throw. If 3 gives you trouble, probably these others do as well. If the difference between 3 and tree gives you trouble, that's because you probably have an error where when you're trying to say the TH sound, the th sound, you might substitute the t sound because that's in your native language and it's easier for you to do. So when we say tree, our tongue goes behind our teeth and the air bursts out, t, t, tree. So you should hear a crisp sound of air, tree, but the same strategy will help. If the R is the part that's giving you difficulty, start with that, re, then add your t sound back, tree. I do have a video talking about words like three versus tree, though versus toe, etc., so that you can really work on hearing that difference and carefully making a distinction between the tongue position of TH and the tongue position of T. Thank you for that request. I'm sure you're not the only one watching today who struggles with that word three. If you want to support your fellow listeners, make a comment or write in the chat that three is a difficult word for you as well. You can also put your word and request in the comments if you're watching this as a replay. And as I said earlier in the class, I'll get back to you with resources and help. Okay. We have a question about the difference between watchin' and watching. Basically, the correct pronunciation is watching with the NG sound, watching. So what's happening there is my tongue is lifting in the back, watching. The middle of my tongue is pushing against the top of my teeth. If I were to say watchin', with my tongue behind my teeth, I'm making the n sound, and the front of my tongue lifts. Here, the middle back of my tongue lifts. That's the main difference that's happening. And basically, as I mentioned before, when you see the letters NG, typically you're not going to have an N and a G, but rather an ng sound with the back of the tongue lifting, watching. What I would suggest is if you have trouble getting this sound, first, actually intentionally add a K sound, like watching, watching, because when you say that K sound, your tongue is going to be in the right place for the NG, and then you just try to, instead of dropping down and doing that strong K where your tongue drops back down, you're going to hold and extend on this, watching, watching, and then you're going to try to fade this back away, watching, watching. So I'm just leaving my tongue up and not letting the K tongue drop, which was what makes the K sound. That's a great strategy for correctly using that NG sound. You can get more help for that and more detailed instruction, practice materials, things that you can use in our Sounds of English course. It's going to walk you through the most common words that have all of the sounds of English and how to practice on those. Thank you for that. That's related to our topic today. Okay, we have a question about how to know if you're doing it well. Well, one thing is if you record and listen, can you hear watching? It might be difficult for you at first, but if you picture and intentionally make that difference, for example, do a word like, say the word ton, and then the word tongue. Weird spelling here, this is silent, but you're going to just make a difference between lifting in the front, ton, and tongue. And if you can't feel that difference, make a difference at the start of a word, like say the word toe, where you feel the tongue lifting there, and the word go, because this position where you're lifting for the G is going to be the same position that you're lifting for the NG. So you can feel, if you feel the difference between toe and go, then try feeling the difference between ton and tongue. Other words, sin and sing, hand and hanged, some other examples. You can get, again, more of those contrast words in our Sounds of English course. Okay, time for a couple more quick questions and then we'll wrap up for today. Thanks for being here, everyone. And it's so nice to see your questions. I'm really excited about this topic. I think it's going to be very helpful to help break down what's happening and why and how to correct it. Okay, question about the word murderer. I talked about this for my difficult words playlist. This is something that I cover. You can get more detailed help on this word in our video for that. I'll direct you to it after the class. If you leave me a quick comment on this video, just type in murderer or maybe put in help with murderer. Otherwise it sounds like an accusation, right? You want to specify what you're happening there, but I can give you a link then for that video. So in murderer, the challenge is we have and We have 3 tight sounds in here. This one is going to be longer and stressed. You'll see that with a stress marker in the dictionary. So I would say first, just try working on murder. And when you're working on that, just try saying just the mer sound. The challenge there, I would say focus on saying just with lifting the tongue and in the back, and then add your M sound back. So you would say mer, and then do the same thing here. Der, and now do der, murder. Then lastly, murderer. So if you break them apart at first, then slowly start to bring them back together. Murderer. You see how this actually kind of becomes we have to kind of do that R, drop it, and then bring it back up. So challenging even for native speakers to say this. In my longer video, I give you a lot of different tricks to try to see if it makes it easier for you. But basically, it's not easy even for native speakers to say that smoothly and naturally. We sometimes have to slow down a little bit to get all of those sounds in a row. So definitely a challenging word. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, we have a question about how to pronounce invincible. So let's look at how to pronounce invincible versus invisible, just because I think that these are close. Invincible. Is that how we spell it? I lost track. So invincible. Sorry, I lost track of where you wrote it. Yes. Oh, I'm misspelling it. That's why it looked weird to me. It has the I, invincible. So the bull or bull sounds is similar. That's why I misspelled it. And then invisible. That one is spelled with able. So they're both stressed on the second syllable vin or viz. And in invincible, we have the added n sound, and then letter C says the s sound. So here we have a spelling and sounds challenge. In invisible, we have letter S saying the Z sound, which you'll see if you look it up in the dictionary. The sound for Z is the same spelling Z in the IPA, invincible. So the challenge, invisible, that is. Invincible, think about it as having an S. I often write the S with 2 S's because when we have words like glass or impossible, 2 S's generally is going to say this sound. That helps your brain know not to make a Z there. Invincible or invincible. Notice at the end that I'm really not putting much between the B and the L. This is what's called a syllabic L, where I'm just going very quickly from the B to the ul sound. Bull. I'm just kind of lifting the back of my tongue, going right to that front tongue stored and lifted behind the teeth. Bull, invincible. Versus invisible. Using that Z there, invisible, and no N sound. The reason I write these with or I is that in the dictionary you're going to see for an unstressed reduced vowel, sometimes they're going to spell it with the I sound like it, and sometimes the sound, vowel schwa. Those are almost interchangeable in these two words and in other words, where what I don't want is invincible or invincible. It's very reduced, so it's not a clear vowel there, very, very short. So the difference between invincible, very small, doesn't matter too much because that's an unimportant syllable. It does really matter if I get this vowel correct. If I'm saying it as an E, for example, invincible, it's going to sound very accented. That goes back to our native pattern where you probably maybe don't have an I sound in your language and you have a tendency to see letter I, say the E sound that you do have in your language. So watch out for that pattern in these words. Great. Wonderful to see so many of you here, and I really enjoyed your questions. Thank you so much for being a part of class. I apologize if I didn't get to everyone's question today, but I do recommend leaving me a comment with your question. I see a few like breakfast and plenty. I do have some videos for those on the channel, so if you leave me a little note in a comment, I'll direct you right to that video. You can watch it. And again, we'll have another live class next week, so hope to see you there. Thank you so much for being a part of class, and do check out our preview tomorrow of our video talking about top errors. I'm going to give you some examples from this first category of 5 words that you can change quickly and right away to make a big improvement in your speech. They're everyday words that you're using all the time, and you might not realize that you're mispronouncing them. So check out that video next. Airs tomorrow, and then of course we'll also have our new video dropping on Tuesday, and we'll be back for live class again on Saturday. In the new year, in 2026, I'm looking to potentially add a second live class. I'm looking at maybe Tuesday morning, Monday morning, Wednesday morning. Let me know what you think about if you can make it to a weekday class. I would keep it kind of short. I might preload some of your questions, let you ask ahead of time. So let me know if that's something where you would watch the replay or be able to attend live. I really enjoy these live classes because they're a great way for me to find out what things you're struggling with and how to help you most. So leave me a comment on that. I'll do a poll on the community page as well, and you can let me know what you think, what day might be best, whether or not you're interested in a second live class. Thanks, everyone. I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Thanks for a great class.